For today's drawing session, I decided to make another fan art from ItsFunneh's Minecraft roleplay series called Yandere High School. This time, the character I decided to draw is Kiran. He's one of the main characters in the series. And honestly, one of the funniest characters too. He was such a goofball throughout the roleplay, but at the same time, he was still a genuinely good character. Also, if you know the series, you know he was an absolute yearner. Since I already made a fan art piece for Gold before this, I wanted both illustrations to feel connected somehow. That's why I decided to keep the background similar to Gold's piece. I also drew the same flower that was in Gold's hair because I thought it would be cute if Kiran was the one who originally gave it to her and she decided to keep wearing it. It's a really small detail, but I like adding little storytelling elements into illustrations because it makes the artwork feel more personal and connected. As I mentioned in my previous video, I decided to continue using the textured brush I used for Gold's fan art. I honestly fell in love with the texture it gives to the linear art and rendering. Compared to my older brush, this one gives the artwork a softer and more painterly feeling while still keeping the lines readable. I'm still experimenting with my art style overall, but I think this brush really matches the direction I want my artwork to go in. For this piece, I also decided to record my actual real-time drawing process instead of just using the default Speedpaint feature from IbispaintX. I thought it would be more interesting for people to see how I actually draw and render certain parts instead of only seeing the sped-up replay version. Honestly, recording in real time made me realize how often I zoom in and out while drawing. One thing I struggled with during this illustration was definitely the proportions. Since I don't draw male characters very often, I kept adjusting the face shape, shoulders, and proportions over and over because something kept feeling slightly off. Male characters are honestly harder for me because I'm way more used to drawing softer and more feminine features. But after experimenting and fixing parts multiple times, I'm genuinely really happy with how everything came out in the end. This piece took me around 4 hours to finish, which I think is becoming my average drawing time now. Back then, my illustrations used to only take around 3 hours. But as my art slowly becomes more detailed, my rendering process naturally takes longer too. Honestly though, I don't really mind the extra time because I enjoy adding all the smaller details now. One thing I especially enjoyed while drawing this piece was rendering the shadows and clothing folds. In my older artworks, I didn't really pay much attention to clothing wrinkles or how fabric folds naturally. But now I think it adds so much more depth and realism to the illustration. Even simple folds can make clothing look way more believable and less flat. As usual, I also added a lot of my stylistic details throughout the piece, like the small 5-line strokes and dotted textures around the artwork. I feel like those tiny details make my illustrations feel more alive and recognizable. I've been slowly developing those little habits naturally while drawing, and I think they've become one of my favorite parts of my style. Overall, I had so much fun making this fan art. It honestly feels really comforting, drawing characters from something I grew up watching. Yandere High School was such a huge part of my childhood online, so making fan art for the series genuinely makes me really happy. I also think this might actually be one of my best male character pieces so far. I'm really proud of how Kiran turned out, especially since male characters are still outside my comfort zone. That's all for today's drawing session, Flooflays. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my art. Enjoy the rest of the speed paint, and I'll see you guys again in the next video. Bye.